So welcome to the start of the new video, guys. Hopefully we can get a fair bit done in this next week coming. I'll show you what my first job of the day is. It's this Austin A40 crankshaft. This is called a 3 main bearing crank because it's got 3 mains and then 4 big ends. Apparently it's already ground to +20, so I need to check them sizes today. The customer has bought in a proper old school service book for it, so I've got my crank sizes out of the book. I've added +30 or taken +30 away from the crankshaft sizes to give me my top and bottom tolerance. The customer has even supplied some really old school Van der Velde bearings. So I mean, I really like these old boxes. Hopefully I'll get to keep them with a bit of luck. He knows that I kind of like old stuff like that. So kind of hoping that once he's took the bearings out of it, I can rehome the boxes for it. So the first thing I've done is just trued up the wheel. So I do that before I grind all the big ends. The next thing I've got to do is set the base size up here. Don't know if the camera's picking up, but there's a scale here. So I'll just alter the fingers, change the scale, and then true it up on this crank. But the first thing I've got to do is just make sure that the crank is running true in the crank grinder. So we do this with a DTI, and then I can adjust how the crank sits by these 4 screws along here, or 3 screws I should say, and that will just allow me to move the crank wherever I need it. So I'll true it up on the front and rear main, this side as well, and then we're ready to grind the big ends. So what I'm doing here is just measuring any run out on the crankshaft as it's set into the machine. And then to adjust it, I have to undo all these screws and then tighten them up or adjust them one by one. So as the needle moves this way, I loosen it off. Just enough. And then as it comes round, I then tighten or loosen the ones that I think need adjustment. Got to be quite quick because sometimes it does move quite fast. He knocked it now and knocked it off the crank. There we go. Too far with it now. There we are. Oh, spot on now. Then what I do is once I've got it running true, I'll knock it into high gear, and then I can watch the deflection on the gauge a little bit more. and then I'll knock it back into slow, move it over to the front journal and repeat the process. The part that I'm adjusting now is the gap in these fingers. So I'm going to open that up a little bit, and I just nip it just so the machine has grabbed the fingers slightly, and then lower the grinding head so this top finger is on the crank, and then just pull this next finger in closer, just so I'm just ever so slightly away from the crank, and holding onto the crank grinder at all time, and then I just nip up the lock nut. Put my Allen keys back on the machine, and then basically I know that I'm ready to grind. I back the top wheel off one complete turn, so I do know that I'm miles away from it. And then the next thing I do is I measure the crank, so I know exactly where I'm starting from size wise. And then out of the book that the customer dropped off, I wrote down my crank sizes and what my finish size would be for the grind that he wants. And then I just double check the sizes. So basically this crank is actually also quite warm. So the next thing to do is to put the splash guard on, start the crank grinder running on a slow speed, and then just feed the wheel in till I just see it starting to grind. And then switch the suds on. And then what I like to do is half a thou at a time, and just let the crank grinder just do the work basically. Don't like to overload the stone. So now I know that I'm cutting into the crank, I then just move the crank grinder to just both fillets. And then I'll just take another half a thou and then move over to the right hand radius. And straight away, as I'm looking at the crankshaft journal, I can see that it's quite oval. It's cutting all the way round on this left hand side, or grinding I should say, but it's not grinding all the way round on the right hand side. It's missing the TDC part of the crankshaft. But that also showed up when I was measuring it. The right hand side of the crank had some taper in it. It had about 3/4 of a thou run out. So what I'm doing now is I'm going to keep coming in half a thou until I took about 3 or 4 thou off, and then I'll lift the crank grinder off the crank, have a measure up so I know I've got a good solid starting point. The big ends are now done on the Austin A40 crank. I've done the first main as well, so I've swapped all the machine over. I'm now using this part of the machine to grind the mains, and now I've started to grind the rear. I've just got to take another tooth out off that, so I'll put the continuous gauge on, which is now marked with how much has got to come off, and carry on grinding. So that's this A40 crank all ground. It was already at plus 20, I've ground it to plus 30, I've micro polished it. The first journal that I did left a little mark in the big end, which is there. The camera's picking it up, I think. But I invited the customer down to look at that, and he wants to run that. It's only in a standard old restored car, and he said that he'd rather do that than grind it to the next undersize, so that was his call. So all I'm going to do now is blow the oil holes out for him, stick it through the cleaner, and then that's ready for him to collect. So the next set of injectors that I've got to do are these VXR injectors. These are for Jordan at Nevlock, who supply all my engine parts, so I've got to make sure these ones are done right. To do this, I've got to make sure the machine is sent back from GDI to standard in the settings, change it from 6 injectors down to 4 injectors, and then that means the machine's set. However, I had the pressure up quite high because I was doing GDIs, so I'm going to back the pressure back down, empty the test tubes, and then I only need 4 ports free at the top there, so it's just a case of me fitting some of these little blanks so I can convert the machine back over to 4 port. Then we're going to load these injectors up and give them a test and see how they flow. So with these VXR injectors, I've done the leak test, I've done the impedance test, and they're all good. So I'm just running them through now, just over 3 bar of pressure. And now I'm going to do a flow test. These are exactly the same injectors what I run in my pickup. So I do quite a lot of sets of these, in all fairness. So I know exactly where they should be flowing. So with a bit of luck, these will flow the same, but we'll run them through the cleaner a couple of times anyway. We'll run them through to clean the bodies and then to clean the pintle and get the spray pattern right. The thing that is nice about these is it's penetrating the fluid all at roughly the same kind of rate, so that's a good sign. And then the final numbers are in. And as you can see, the one on the end is just a little bit down, but I'm pretty sure by the time they've gone through the cleaner, these will be brand new again. So I'll put them through the cleaner, get them where they're all nice and sorted, and then we'll run them again to see if they're good. So at the minute, the VXR injectors are being cleaned, and that's just how much dirt has come off the bodies. I'm only cleaning the bodies at the moment, but this was this ultrasonic fluid was clear. So yeah, they weren't great. The bodies weren't great. So what I'm going to do now is connect the trigger wires up for it, and then that will clean the needle and the pintle and the seat and everything. So that's the injectors now connected to the trigger wires. So this one is still a little bit low. Now this has been through the cleaner twice. Well, these injectors have been through the cleaner twice. These are all showing 111 millilitres, and this one's showing about 109. So they're well within spec, but I'm just going to let my customer know. I'm going to mark this one injector as well, and then just keep him informed on that one's a little bit low. I mean, I'd replace this if I was him, because it's going in a high powered car. But I'm going to bag them all up. He's going to collect them today, and that's another job done. That's it, that's that job done. They're all bagged, sealed up, ready to send back. So a lot's been happening at Grace Engine Developments this weekend. It's Monday today. And Saturday, Sam and a load of the boys decided that they was going to try and get some machines over to the new building, start the moving process. So the first thing that was needed was to make some space. So all the racking and all the engines that was on the racking was moved to the front and labelled, so we can actually work out what was what and where it was all going to go and things. And then we sold Sam's big blue toolbox because it was just a bit too big for the new unit. We weren't sure where it was going to go, so John come and collected that to get that out of the way. And then the first machine that I wanted to get rid of was the big lathe, which you've seen me use, which is sat there normally. So that was that. We then also moved over the small little pillar drill, which doesn't really get used that much, but we just thought we'd get that over. The shim grinder, what I use for doing the tappets and bits and bobs, which is normally sat there, we decided to move that over because we needed to move this valve spring compressor from here, because we was going to try and move the mill. So we got the mill onto the machine skates, but that's as far as that one got. But that allowed us to move that back because Sam then decided to take the head skimmer over. Now the head skimmer is my machine that I use every single day. So if there's one machine that I want to be moved and have no problems with, it's my head skimmer. So anyway, it's about, I don't know, 6:30, 7 o'clock. The head skimmer's mounted onto the fork truck, and the guys start to carefully move it over. And from there I'll show you what's happened. It's no fault of theirs, it's just bad luck. The bottom of the head skimmer is hollow, and as it's bumped over the bumps in the concrete, the hollow part of the head skimmer down there has slipped on the forks of the forklift and made it rock over this way, and it's, as you can see down there, it's got a bend to it. It's fallen against the telegraph pole, but unfortunately this motor here is what causes the head skimmer to swing. It's basically broke the casting where the motor bolts to off the machine, which I ain't gonna lie is a complete pig, because I use it all the time. I've got heads waiting to be done, stuff I've promised out, and I'm already under a lot of pressure with moving machines and still trying to earn some money to pay for everything. And that is the one machine which I've had for, I don't know, 15 years. I bought it second hand and it has been awesome. I mean, the manufacturer, Comec, of that machine, fair play to them, it's been absolutely bomb proof. We've broken it. It's not a machine failure, we've broken it. And you know, it ain't Sam's and the boys' fault. They're trying their best to move everything as careful as they can, and we just had a bit of bad luck. So yeah, so that's that happened. We're now trying to fix it. So Sam was here till 4 o'clock Saturday or Sunday morning, trying to make a new adapter up to get the to get the motor back on. So also, not only that, we had to then wire this in quick. Then we've had the phases checked, and we think where the motor's took a big hit, it's knocked a phase down off the motor. So not great really. And then I thought, well, it's no problem, we have bought a big head skimmer which we haven't used yet. We'll just recommission that. So Graves and Voller then decided to fire up that, and which is there, and we put a test cylinder head on to make sure it's flat and whatnot. And what happens with that? That motor blows up. It's all the dirt from it, or all the smoke from it. So at the moment, I've got God knows how many cylinder heads and blocks to skim, and 2 broken skimming machines. Sam's taken the motor over now to see if we can get a new motor and get that one temporarily up and running. I've just spoken to a guy that supplies all my machine tools and bits and bobs, and a new head skimmer, the same as what I've got but a slightly different make. That's another £12,000, which I could really do with not having to buy that at the moment. But I'm also completely buggered without it. There's tools everywhere, swarf everywhere, and I really don't know which way to turn, to be fair. But there we are, an eventful Monday. Hopefully Tuesday will be better. Well, it's been a stressful few days trying to get this head skimming machine back working, but I must admit, Sam and Graves and all the boys have done really well. Sam made this adapter to try and get the old motor to work again, but unfortunately what we think's happened is when it hit the telegraph pole, and it just caught the back of the motor, snapped this off. But we think what happened was it damaged the phase inside the motor as well, because like I say, Sam got this all bolted up and working, but unfortunately it didn't work in the back of the machine. So Sweep and Mickey and the boys at the body shop, and also Graves, knew about a motor company just down the road in Hungerford called Amtex. So I'd like to shout out Amtex, because we rang them up and told them what was going on, and they said pop down and let's see if we can fix it or have a look at it and sort the problem out. So Sam and Graves went down to Amtech, and I'm not sure the guy at Amtech, but he put loads of effort in trying to make sure we get the right motor, the right speed, the right frequency, different brackets to try and mount it on the machine, and it was the value for money was brilliant. So Sam then spent some time, I think with Voller, can't remember, getting the new motor on the machine and getting the head skimmer back up and running for me. So that's brilliant. The things that we've had to do to make it work is jiggle around with the mounting holes here so the gear meshes correctly inside the machine. Now, it still isn't perfect. The machine is a little bit noisy in one direction, but on the direction that actually gives the finished cut, it sounds perfect. So I think there is a slight misalignment in the gears. I already emailed Comac, who make this machine, and they've quoted now for the proper motor and a new machine. And well, I don't think I've got a lot of choice really, because even just having a few days of not running my machine, it's just caused a problem really. This machine is the machine, it's used every day, a few times as well. So yeah, I could really do without the purchase, but I think a new machine is going to have to come pretty soon. So now I've just got the decision: do I stick with Comac? Bearing in mind I've had this machine for about 15 years. I bought it second hand, and apart from general replacing the stones, maintenance, new diamonds and things like that, this machine has never missed a beat. We broke this machine, it didn't fail. My valve facer that I use all the time is made by Comec, and once again that is perfect. So I trust this brand completely. Now there's another brand that sell a very similar machine to this, and my valve guide machine is made by that brand, and they're good as well. So really I don't actually know what to do. I don't know whether to order the same make as what I've had but a new version of it. It will also be a mill, so where this has got a diamond and then stones for grinding, the mill version uses the diamond for aluminium, and then it uses something called a CBN for machining cast iron. So there won't be so much dust around. However, I would keep this machine because if we do an aluminium head what's got the pre-combustion chambers in it, they still need to be ground and still need to be cooled, so it would have the suds running through it. So this machine would have the new motor put back onto it and be kept, but probably kept the other side of the workshop, maybe, I don't know. I could really do without the expenditure of it because we've got so much going on with the workshop. I haven't got the money, quite simply, but like I say, this is the machine that makes the money, so I think it will have to go on a credit card, and then I'll just pay the credit card off. The only decision I've got, actually, I've made my mind up that I'm having a new machine. I've just got to make my mind up which machine I'm going to go for. The other thing is I'm going to put the original motor back on, because this motor, albeit it's perfect and it's getting me out of the out of a problem, where the machine is a little bit longer, when I come down to machine a small cylinder head, the motor hits the back of this machine here. That's not a problem though, because I have got blocks which I don't run, which come with this machine, so I can bolt them back on, and it just means everything bumps up in height a little bit. But either way, I was panicking. Sam and the boys have got me out of it again, so I just want to shout out all of them really: Sam, Graves, Voller, Carl, anyone else that's helped and I forgot about. You've all been fantastic, just to give me only 2 days without having me head skimmer. And like I say, now we've just got the decision to decide which machine we go for. Whoops. We've got to tidy up the wiring up here, because we was hiding the plugs up here for the machines. So I don't quite know how Graves is going to sort that, but that needs jiggling around a little bit. And then, like I say, the other thing is the new version of this, which has got the milling cutter on it, because it's variable speed. Apparently that's single phase as well. But I've just machined this block for one of the local Renault specialists. So I've honed it. It was already the right size bore, so I've honed it. I've just skimmed the surface. I'm just going to go and chamfer the top of the bore and then get that in the cleaner, and that's another job done. Leave me some comments, please, guys. What do you think? What machine do you think I should go for? Stick with Comec, that I know is good. Go for the newer brand, which I also know is good. Price-wise, there's not really a lot of difference in it. Have you got any other ideas of which way to go and what to do? Yeah, a bit of a different video, more of a stressed out James video, but thanks for viewing, and I'll catch you on the next one.